Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, where you learn how to extract your business and personal deep wealth. I'm your host, Jeffrey Feldberg. This podcast is brought to you by Deep Wealth and the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience. When it comes to your business deep wealth, your exit or liquidity event is the most important financial decision of your life. But unfortunately, up to 90% of liquidity events fail. Think about all that time and your hard-earned money wasted. Of the quote-unquote successful liquidity events, most business owners leave 50% to over 100% of the deal value in the buyer's pocket and don't even know it. I should know. I said no to a seven-figure offer and yes to mastering the art and the science of a liquidity event. 2 years later, I said yes to a different buyer with a 9-figure deal. Are you thinking about an exit or liquidity event? Don't become a statistic and make the fatal mistake of believing the skills that built your business are the same ones to sell it. After all, how can you master something you've never done before? Let the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience and the 9-step roadmap of preparation help you capture the best deal instead of any deal. At the end of this episode, take a moment and hear from business owners like you who went through the Deep Wealth Experience. Alan Wozniak is the former president, CEO, and founder of Pure Air Control Services, Inc. in Clearwater, Florida, which is an environmental and HVAC mechanical firm which was established in 1984. Pure Air Control Services has divisions in building sciences, environmental diagnostics, laboratory, and building remediation groups. In 2021, Alan successfully managed the sale of the firm to a Fortune 500 company, RPM International. Pure Air Control Services is a provider of indoor environmental services in over 19,000 facilities covering 900 million square feet, both nationally and internationally, and is one of the largest full-services, comprehensive, healthy building indoor environmental firms in the nation, with heavy experience in government, healthcare, higher education, lower education, commercial, and entertainment markets. Some of Mr. Wozniak's many accomplishments include leading the firm to Inc. 500 national list 4 years in a row, a 370% growth in the past 5 years, the Tampa Bay Fast 50 fastest growing private firms, the Tampa Bay Business Journal MBE Top 25, the National Hispanic Business Top 500, Frost & Sullivan Product Differentiation Innovation Award for its solutions for improving indoor air quality, and providing the management and oversight of the M&A process to realize a 17.5 EBITDA. Mr. Wozniak has authored numerous articles on indoor air quality and is a Newsweek magazine expert author. In addition, Mr. Wozniak has been a guest lecturer on many webinars, podcasts, workshops, and indoor air quality symposiums. Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. And as you heard from the introduction, we have a superstar. We are in the presence of success with our guest. We have a thought leader, a successful business owner, just coming off a tremendous liquidity event, who's here to talk all things business and beyond. Alan, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. An absolute pleasure to have you with us. And you know what, Alan, before we get going into this treasure trove of wisdom that you have, there's always a story behind the story. Alan, what's your story? What got you to where you are today?
Jeffrey, thanks for having me on your podcast. This is an excellent opportunity to share information. Quite frankly, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I started actually a quick story. It goes back probably 50 years ago. During the summer, growing up as a kid, a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, I would literally had lawn businesses. I had lawn cutting businesses. I'd paper routes. I'd pick up bottles off the street, turn them in for cash. One of my other businesses, I did a gas station attending construction. But one of the businesses I did, my first as a business, was everybody does lemonade stands. And lemonade was the thing. It is today. But I realized very young that you want to be different. What's your differentiator? So instead of doing lemonade, I happened to do Tang. I think Tang was, maybe my lemonade was out at our house. And so Tang was the thing we had. And Tang is a mixed drink the same way. So it happened to be one of the drinks that was resonating back then, and a lot of people used it. So I set up my Tang stand, and my dad at the time was a general contractor, a home builder. And on occasion, he'd bring in clients to our house. This is up in Northern Virginia, McLean. And he brought in a gentleman, and I happened to have the lemonade stand there, and walks up and introduces himself. And I'm not really paying attention to who he was and what he was, but he bought a couple cups of Tang from me. Mm-hmm. And my dad later, he introduced himself as Neil Armstrong. It didn't mean anything to me at the time.
The Neil Armstrong?
The Neil Armstrong.
Oh, my goodness.
This is what I used to drink when I was in outer space.
Wow.
So that became, I said, Dad, did you get a picture with me and him? Because I could use that today. If I wrote a book, this would have been a perfect cover, story. But that was my first customer service. That was another big thing that I grew up with, is the customer service centric capacity. Mm-hmm. And today, quite frankly, customer service sucks. It's bad. You've seen you buy anything today besides Amazon, it's just not good as an overall service. But that was really my first time into it. And as I grew up, we started an HVAC industry, the heating, ventilation, air conditioning. And we were one of dozens. I mean, you were a dime a dozen of HVAC companies. And all of us, we were either Carrier dealers, Trane dealers, Siemens, whatever the manufacturer was. And each time that we have a meeting with the manufacturer, in this case, let's call it Carrier, the first thing out of their mouth was, hey, Alan, how we doing? How many boxes did we move? So we really were in a product-centric box moving business that, quite frankly, it's the cheapest guy wins when you become a commodity such as that. So I realized I got to get out of this business, because this is just, everybody's in it. And we had in just our little county, we had 800 licensed contractors. And then you add another 800 of unlicensed contractors. That's a lot in the small area.
Sure.
So what I did, I started realizing, what can I do differently with this industry that differentiates me? So I realized every time I walked by an air handler, we would take one out, commercial, residential, they would smell nasty. You literally could be 5 to 10 feet away from it if you were downstream and the unit was outside. You could smell the odor. So I thought, this must not be good for people. And I didn't know. So I later took some samples, some bulk samples. I sent to a lab that I know, and an environmental microbiology lab, and had them analyze it. And the analysis came back with a lot of microbes such as Penicillium, Aspergillus, other known pathogens that cause significant distress in those who are immunocompromised. I happened to have a friend that was an allergist immunologist. So I ran this report by the doctor. I said, Doctor, would these samples or the analysis that we have here, the analytes that were measured, would these cause concern to your patients? And he said, absolutely. 99% of my patients would have an allergic reaction to these, and they were in abundance. So I thought, okay, there's something here, because they all have it, but nobody's addressing it. They're just interested in moving a box, moving an air handler, putting in a condenser, putting it in an air handler and condensing systems. And so I met with EPA, NIOSH, OSHA, World Health, and they all said the same thing. Alan, yes, it's a problem. We're in the cusp of a major issue. It will be a problem in the coming years, and it's a problem today. We just don't know about it. So I said, I'm going to change the focus. My goal as a differentiator was, I'm going to build a building science group that studies buildings.
And Alan, let me ask you a quick question here. I'm curious. I'm sure listeners are curious. Most business owners in your situation, you get asked by the supplier, who's your partner, hey, how many boxes have you moved? And it's, oh, yeah. Let's look at doing more boxes. And you did that, and we'll hear more about that. But what had you curious of what exactly is this doing anyways? And what's really going on here? And why is there this funny smell that's coming from that? Most business owners would have just looked the other way. Let me just sell some more, get some more profits. What was it at that time that had you say, hey, something's going on here. Let me find a little bit more what's this is all about?
Number one, probably curiosity mostly, but also I saw this as, okay, that's my differentiator.
Okay.
If I move towards an environmental building or a healthy building, healthy home, that could differentiate me between them and me. And I'd ask the question to the consumer, the business owner, or the homeowner, do you suffer from allergies? Do your children suffer from allergies? Or does any family member suffer from allergies? And if so, have they had allergic reactions while at home or while at work? And inevitably, the answer was yes. And the next question is, would it be of concern to you if I could improve that, would that make a difference in your life? And the answer was unequivocally yes. So instead of selling Mrs. Smith calling me and said, hey, I want an air conditioning system, I would say, time out. What about your health? What about your air quality? What's the conditions? This is 30 years ago, mind you.
So you're way ahead of the curve. I mean, today we kind of take that for granted, but back then people must have looked at you. What's this guy talking about? Where is he coming from?
Exactly. And so that was the focus of the business, is to identify, like a doctor would a patient. You wouldn't go to your doctor and without a battery of tests, a battery of questions, and have them perform surgery or prescribe you medication. That's just normal. But so why do businesses that are centric to product or others prescribe something that they don't really know what works? It might have a brochure that says, this does this, that, and the other, but they don't really know that it works. Like a body, everyone's different. And like a building, every building's different. We analyzed entire campuses. We did over 19,000 studies over 900 million square feet.
Wow. Hold on. Did you say 19,000 studies?
19,000 over the years of our business. So you can imagine that could be 19,000 people. So we had a pretty good database. We literally wrote white papers, peer-reviewed white papers on indoor quality, what's considered to be normal. Like a doctor would, if you were measuring the metabolic health of an individual patient, that would cover, say, your waist circumference, your fasting blood glucose, your blood pressure, your HDLs, triglycerides. We were doing the same thing with buildings, studying what are the baseline conditions. And nobody did it. In fact, today, very few do what we do or had done. So every department, I had 4 divisions. One was a building science group, one was a lab. And the lab differentiator was we had doctors on staff. The other differentiator was we had a chamber that we literally did efficacy studies on products.
Wait a minute, you had doctors on staff?
Yes, not initially. This is, maybe 10 years into the business. In order to have an accredited lab, I needed key people, PhD level scientists that were in the microbiology, immunology arena that knew this stuff and that could measure it. And we grew it to become one of the best boutique labs in the country. We'd water samples for Legionella analysis would come into our lab all the time just for analysis. So we became a very niche business that analyzed samples. So pre-COVID, it was very busy, and post-COVID, obviously become much, much busier as a business. Our remediation division, basically the differentiator there was we would take old, large air handling systems and refurbish them for about half the cost of brand new and provide a warranty that was 5 times better than a new unit manufacturer warranty. And we would basically abrade the rust. We would remove insulation from the interior of it that was heavily molded. We would steam clean the coil. We had a 14-step process to do that. We would take out the blower assembly, which was a large squirrel cage system with a VFD motor and a shaft. We would remove it and put in a 1,000-pound fan array or fan wall with ECM motors. Zero maintenance on that system, whereas it was a lot of maintenance. And facility managers loved the fact that it was quieter, more efficient, redundant, meaning if one of the fans were to go, the others would continue to operate themselves. These systems that became very fashionable pre-COVID and then post-COVID. When COVID hit, the world stopped for 2 or 3 months, and we did too. But all of a sudden people realized, COVID is an airborne virus. CDC initially called it a surface virus. Literally, our first, being mechanical engineers and scientists, our team got together and said, look, this is a microscopic organism. We know that it's in the 0.03 micron level. What happens to a 0.03 micron particle? It stays suspended. So we knew that the particulate was a suspended particle that we designed HVAC systems to change the air 4 to 10 times an hour. So at a low level, you can imagine the air in your room moving every 15 minutes. So the last 30 minutes we've been here, that your air has changed twice.
And now let me just jump in here for a moment. And I know for our listeners, Alan brings such a wealth of information that we're going to have a multi-part series where we're talking shop today on the business side, and then it's going to be health. And you're going to hear some things you're never going to look the same again when you walk inside your home, a building, an office. But Alan, I just want to get this straight. So when you first started out in business, it sounds like you're like everyone else, and your curiosity is really what had you start asking questions, and you saw that, hey, here's an area I can differentiate myself and really do something that no one else is doing. And it's a problem that no one really understands or recognizes or sees what's there. So on paper, it looks so easy. It sounds so easy. In reality, it never usually is. What were some of the challenges that you had out of the gates when you started going down that path? And how did you eventually begin to scale? I mean, to start having in-house doctors and 19,000 tests that you've done. I mean, that is just monumental. But how did you get there? You had to start somewhere, and you certainly didn't start there when you first began.
Yeah, great question. When we started the business, it just didn't explode. Obviously, we were pioneers in the indoor environmental arena. We grew at a favorable amount each year, 5-10%, sometimes not so much, but it was somewhat a steady growth. Obviously, you would hit recessions. We went through probably 3 recessions in that time frame. And obviously, you'd have different situations, but it started to pick up momentum over the last, I would say, 10 years, became more in vogue. When COVID hit, obviously, it became even more. And I call it today, it's the Wild West of indoor air quality, because there's a lot of bad stuff out there that people are just, buying in droves because of the federal funding, ESSER funds and CARES dollars.
Sure.
It was a slow growth, and probably our defining moment in our business, and ours is very typical of most, is we pay our people for what we can afford, not necessarily what they're worth. And I realized that with larger companies, and they were paying well for their people. And I realized that's one of the things I needed to get into this next realm. I need to bring in people that are smarter than me. And I had been doing that for the last 20 years. In addition, I need to, these are A-player type people. They're go-getters. They're going to they're making it happen. In addition, I needed to have my processes, my marketing and sales and operation process, work seamless. I didn't want redundancy. Like our fan arrays, we put in systems that are redundant. We want to add redundancy. In a business, you want to minimize that. I don't want to do things 5 times over the same process. So we built a system that was non-redundant. It moved from one location to another, from our marketing team to grading clients, to our sales team and sales process, to the production, the operational side. And that's really that process that we developed. It took years to develop, getting in conjunction with getting key A players, really moved the business and buying into what I had to sell. We're in a consultative business. We're not a box moving business. We're selling the why and not the what we do.
Although you could have been that box moving business had you been like everyone else, not asked any questions and just went along.
Exactly. Yeah. And we decided, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to differentiate ourselves between all the other guys. And quite frankly, 10, 20, 30 years later, they're like, oh my gosh, you were so smart in doing that. Well, it wasn't really smart. It was just, I wanted to be different.
Sure.
I don't want to be like you guys. I don't want to move boxes. And in fact, it was ironic, one of the first large consulting projects on our building science team we got, it was from the manufacturer that was telling us to move boxes, that we're now consulting to them because they had a poor installation as mechanical engineers and building scientists. They saw us as, okay, we have a problem unit that we just installed.
Yes. And
we have to find out what the problem is, and we got to fix it. And you guys are it. So here we are. The first client, one of the first clients, was the company who we were literally buying equipment from, paying large dollars, but getting a box that everybody else was comparing the same thing to. So that was an ironic part of the puzzle. That really gave us a push to get into this business in a bigger way, because it was a year-long project and it sustained our building science team, our lab team, and our remediation team one large project.
And so, Alan, if we can pause here for a moment, because there's some really important takeaways for our listeners that are coming out of this. Look, if we check the egos at the door and we're open and honest about this, Alan, the HVAC industry, it's a competitive industry. There's many companies, and some would say they're more or less all generic in terms of what they do. Yet despite that, you, from your curiosity, you carved out a very unique position. And I know offline, we've had a number of conversations and we're talking about blue oceans, which is in the 9-step roadmap. Step number 2, X factors that insanely increase the value of your business. One of them is a blue ocean, where you move out of the red ocean, where all the fishing boats are. You're all competing for the same fish, and it's bloody, and there's not a lot of fish, and there's scarcity. And here you are in the blue ocean. You're beginning to do your own thing, even to the point where one of your suppliers or partners says, hey, I saw what you're doing. Can we talk more about this? This is interesting to me. And so that curiosity, is that something in business that you've always relied upon, or when did that start to come into focus for you?
Well, I think it's part of what my focus was from day one. I wanted to be a differentiator. I didn't know what that meant in terms of my particular business at the time. Looking back historically, 30 years later, it was heaven sent. It was something that really defined the business, defined us as who we are. We became the leader. In fact, Inc. 5, we were at Inc. 5000, I think it was 4 years running in the last 5 years, meaning that we're the fastest growing private companies in the country. And if you break that down, because that's 5,000 companies, and you break down the indoor environmental services companies, we were the number one. So that's a big accolade that was bestowed on us, but because of what we did. If I was a typical HVAC contractor like I did years ago, and we stayed that same path, and hey, we're going to stick to our guns, we're going to sell air conditioning, we're going to be the best air conditioning company out there, we wouldn't be in the same boat we are today.
And so let me ask you, and our listeners heard it in the introduction. I mean, Inc. 500, you're on the national list 4 years in a row, a 370% growth increase over the past 5 years, Tampa Bay Fast 50, and the list just goes on and on with what you've done. So when you found your differentiator, and by the way, Alan, I would put your curiosity as an X factor on your leadership. We don't often see that. We look at X factors more in the business, more as inanimate kinds of things. But in your case, that curiosity, that's really an X factor that had you just see the world completely different. So you're starting to grow, you're getting traction. How are you handling things in terms of cash flow and money? And did you have to get some financing from the bank? Did you get some outside financing? What was that looking like, and some of the challenges for you when you started to find your rhythm?
That's a great question. We never actually, from day one, we never had outside funding.
Love it.
We never had not a rich uncle or aunt that said, hey, here's money, go knock yourself out. It was just nose to the grindstone business, never say never attitude.
Yes.
And having what I term stick-to-itiveness, we're going to stick to it no matter what. And there are times, quite frankly, that we could have, in fact, I had other outside parties saying, Alan, why are you still in business? Why are you still doing this? You're not making money, you're losing money on occasion. And this goes back in the early days when most businesses, 50% fail in the first 5 years, 60% or 70%. The reason they fail is because they didn't have a strategic plan. One of the things that we did do was we built a strategic plan way back when. Now, would it work today? No. But the differentiation, identification will work today as it did back then. But it was not without struggle. Some would consider us a 30-year overnight success story. It took 30 years to get to our point. And we had enough audacity and enough stick-to-itiveness to say, hey, we're going to go through this. And if it requires knocking down walls, we're going to go there. And it really, through all the recessions we went through, it made us very proud of what we did and also very frugal. Every penny we spent, we negotiate everything to the point where we'd get multiple bids on things that we needed to get done, and not to go in with the lowest bid, but we would go with the most competent service and so forth.
And you know what? I absolutely love that. And this topic is near and dear because you're bootstrapping it. I call that a cockroach startup. And in a cockroach startup, like you said, you don't have a rich family member that you can go to. You're not going to the banks or outside investors. Resilience trumps resources. And I know,
Yep.
as an example, in my case and many other business owners, back in the day with my e-learning company, you know what, Alan, if I would have had access to the cash, I don't know if the company ultimately would have been so successful like it went on to be. And let me ask you that question. If you would have had access to oodles and oodles of cash, private equity would have come back in the day and written the check for you. How would that have changed your trajectory? What would that have looked like?
That's a great question, Jeffrey, because I see today
Mm-hmm.
businesses in the private equity industry and the merger and acquisition industry, they just throw money at stuff. And, I don't think we wouldn't have been as successful as we were if we had been given a lot of money
Mm-hmm.
and had to not necessarily earn it, but had to work in that capacity. I think because we had to bootstrap ourselves.
Uh-huh.
Every day was a new day. We're going to take Dodge by sundown. That was the mentality every
Sure.
single day. And our business grew until we started doing some things that differentiate ourselves from a business and process point
Mm-hmm.
that we really started to take off. In the last 5 years, that's where our biggest growth was as an organization. But to answer your question, I quite frankly don't think I see companies who are brand new business and they put in $10 million into it. And 3 years later, they've lost 30 million. And, we couldn't have operated that way. I'm going to make money every single month because I know that it's going to affect the P&L every month, the balance sheet every month. And I need to show a good progression in order to be marketable to some M&A or some PE that might eventually if we want to go that route. That was the end goal. That was not the end goal for me, but it was okay. But if I go there,
Yes.
how do I become more valuable to
Mm-hmm.
the outside world? And that's sort of what we looked at.
And what's interesting there, I mean, there's so many takeaways, Alan, for business owners, entrepreneurs, founders, you name it, that access to money isn't the end all and be all that we often think that it is. When we're pushed and we have that pressure, we're forced to just really find ways of, okay, how can we innovate? How can we do this different? How can we become more productive? How can we keep the cost down? And that's exactly what you did. So you're bootstrapping all the way through. You're starting to get some success. So, Alan, what was it? You mentioned that in the last 5 years in particular, that's when things really started to click for you. What was it? Was there a single factor, or was it a few things that came together that in the last 5 years you just catapulted and you took off revenue wise, profit wise?
Yes, there was a number of things. It wasn't any singular event. It
Okay.
was what I referred to earlier as not succumbing to the woe is me mentality,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to do things as cheap as I can. I went out and got A players and paid them
Mm-hmm.
well and had a game plan. And here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. And here's
Mm-hmm.
why we're going to do what we're doing. And we defined our goals and objectives very meticulously. We met to exceed them each and every time. In addition, I brought in a marketing director. So I got key sales reps. I had a very good operational team with good direction. So that was working in our favor.
Okay.
Our lab was good, very good at what we did. And our building science team was very good at what they do. They were
Mm-hmm.
very prolific in what their processes were. What we didn't have a great grasp on is the sales and the marketing aspect. So I changed that around by getting A players. I changed it
Mm-hmm.
around by getting a marketing director. We had a game plan, collective one. We would meet weekly
Mm-hmm.
on what's the marketing, because what happened in the past, before that, we would do trade shows and conferences and webinars, and the marketing side of it we would do. And then we'd say we got 100 leads out of a conference. We didn't have the time to work those 100 leads. We would
Mm-hmm.
take the low hanging fruit, the top 5, and work those, and we would forget the rest.
Hmm.
That's 95 other
Sure.
prospective
Sure.
clients that
Mm-hmm.
really want your business. So what we did in our new process, we developed a system
Mm-hmm.
where the marketing and sales never communicated before. 5-6 years ago, we did a program where we incorporated the marketing to work with the sales and the sales management CRM,
Mm-hmm.
that they correlated and they talked to each other. So we would then know, and we would put them into our drip campaign. If we didn't talk to them, they would at least be communicated with. We would educate them, and we would
Mm-hmm.
continue to, and then we brought in an inside sales that would call those individuals. So all those things coupled with, it really helped. And my goal, to my team was, I don't want to have one stone unturned. everybody is important.
Mm-hmm.
Every client's important, and we need to make them feel that way. So if they, arrived at our conference or their trade show or event,
Mm-hmm.
and they talked to us and they had an interest in what we do and how we do it, let's communicate back to them, because I've been to conferences and trade shows and I've talked to vendors, and it's typical. You never hear from them.
Yeah.
And why are you spending this tens of thousands of dollars and you're spending hundreds of dollars per lead and then letting it go to waste? It just doesn't make sense. And I did it for many years. And just for the lack of time and energy and money, I was doing that, but I stopped it. And then that's really what made the tides turned in that regard.
Interesting. And Alan, I want to speculate on something, but I don't want it to be speculation, because I've heard you say this during our discussion right now, and offline we had a few conversations. You really didn't sell, in the sense that I don't think you sold a day in your life. It sounds like you really educated the marketplace and prospects. You weren't doing any hard selling or what in the movies or you hear or read about. You took a much softer approach. I'm going to say a more value add approach of education. Can you talk to us? How did that influence your sales process and turning prospects from suspects to prospects, ultimately into clients, into raving fans? How did you do that? And outside of yourself, did your team follow your lead with that?
Yes, another great question. Our work that we did, and that's another thing that I put together, was our sales process. A sales process for whoever was brought in. They would do the same thing. Now, not to become ritualistic in the process, but here's the game plan, and we're going to work this the way, because nobody knew our business. So I knew that I need to have a process for our level of service. I term it more prescriptive selling and consultative selling.
Okay.
Because we're not selling the what, we're selling the why we do what we do. Because quite frankly, people don't care. They don't care what you do. They care why you do and they can benefit and how they can benefit from that level of service. So all of our staff became selling the why, and we became very efficient at it. I call it the three, one of my processes was the 3 Ps. You have to understand the procurement identification, the process of what you do and why you do what you do, and get them to engage. And then the price. Is the price of what you're looking for, does it make sense? And getting that out of the way really was a game changer. In addition to, I researched what the big guys were doing. In fact, we had a lot of large clients, carriers and trains and other large organizations. And I saw what they were doing. What they were doing was, they'd have some good sales reps, but they also had procurement vehicles that allowed them to be purchased, their service or level of service, without going out to the competitive bid every time you go out and go through that exercise. And in the end, I saw the indoor quality, unlike a piece of equipment, it's price A, price B, price C. It's the same thing. And there's not a whole lot of differentiation. And what we were doing was that we were looking at our level of service to provide to the customer, and how do we do that in a way that resonates with them specifically. But that was really the focus, on a consultative selling, on a prescriptive selling. And I've got many doctor friends in the past, and you would never I've never been in a doctor's office that if I was ailing, that they didn't say, the admin secretary calls me over and says, okay, go down the hallway, turn to the right, go in room B, and doctor's going to start operating on you. You never do that. I run out of that room as fast as I could. Well, why do we do that in business? We say, you need this, and this is my price, versus what is the person's need? What is their concern? Where are they hurting? What is the issues that you face with? What's the short-term issues? What's the long-term issues? Where do you want to be in 5 years? I asked that question to a facility manager at a large university, and he was blown away that I asked him, well, Bob, what's your 5-year plan? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And how can I help you get there? Not selling what I did, my product. I sold him on helping him get to his destination in a better way. And that's how my sales plan was with our guys, was this is how we want to operate on every level of our team. It went from closing 20, 30% to 60, 70%. And because people saw that we cared, and they saw that we knew what we were doing, and we had a great product and level and service that resonated with them that they wanted. And we became a much sought after level of service as we grew into the business.
So at the risk of oversimplifying, and I'm not going to do you any justice at all, big picture wise, the narrative that I'm picking up on is you have this very curious and ambitious business owner, otherwise known as Alan, who's in incredibly competitive industry, but ask the question, how do I create my own blue ocean? How can I not only differentiate myself, but do so in an area that's meaningful to people? That when I explain the why, not the what, in your words, they're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that the air I was breathing is affecting my health, or it's having this impact or that impact. And you bootstrapped it along the way, and you just grew and you became competitive. You outworked, outmaneuvered, didn't outspend your competition, but you outthought them with what you're doing through your resilience. And in the last 5 years, before you had your liquidity event, things really clicked in. All those years of time and effort, it sounds like it just all gelled together and you took off. When did you start thinking, Alan, about a liquidity event? What was that like? Because most business owners, when you say, hey, do you think you're ever going to sell the business? The typical response is one of two things. I can't imagine myself not being in the business, not having life outside the business, so I don't know. Or, yeah, one day I will, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. I'll know when I'm going to know, and then I'll start doing that. But I suspect for you is a very different narrative going on there. So what did that sound like and look like?
Yeah, I pretty much had my nose to the grindstone the entire time. And what resonated was I literally, if I said 200 is probably on the low side, private equity firms approaching us and, hey, we'd like to talk to you. And I had some minimal offers and I'm like, no, I love what I do and I want to continue doing it. And we're going to just grow it internally and not externally. I had some M&As that approached me as well that I looked at, okay, what makes the most sense? And I realized that we're going into a new administration with our federal government and not knowing, good, bad, or indifferent, what that would bring. I thought, maybe this is a time to close this chapter, open up another one. And I decided at that point, yes, this makes sense. Yes, it looks good for the organization as a whole. It benefited everybody. Everybody got value out of it. The team that I had produced, and it just made sense. Since I've only been gone a month and a half, but my new venture is very similar to, not similar, but it takes the same threshold of a doctor of a patient, the health of a building. I'm looking at the health of a business.
And Alan, what you had was so monumental, so tremendous. Let's just pause there for a moment on the new business and just talk a little bit about the liquidity event.
Yes.
And the one question, I speak with so many business owners and they say, Jeffrey, I go to bed at night praying that someone's going to knock at the door and offer to buy the business. And Alan, and I know, and a Deep Wealth with a 9-step roadmap, that an unsolicited offer is absolutely the worst way to go. You had the discipline when you had those knocks, and you said you had over 200 private equity or other groups approaching you. How did you deal with, hey, thank you, but no thank you at this point in time? And ultimately, when it did come time for your liquidity event, how did you begin that process?
I was busy running a business, so obviously don't have time to respond to 200 plus P&Es. And if you're going to, my thing is I need to be referred. I need to know somebody knows somebody who knows somebody kind of thing. I just, ABC coming out of the blue, hey, we're interested in buying you. Okay, that's great, but no, thank you. It has to be referred. I got to feel comfortable and confident that person is legitimate and they're the right person to be talking with, even from a discovery mode level. But I just felt that at the time, it made sense to talk to the organization that we did. We did have a relationship with them for 7 years prior.
Okay.
That was relatively successful. And I thought they have boots on the ground. They have an infrastructure that I didn't have that I needed to grow because we were growing at a rapid pace. And I felt that they would be able to help take us to that next level that I really wouldn't be able to do. I could do it maybe 10 years down the road, but I couldn't do it instantaneously. And that's where the funding would have helped bring us to that next level that I wanted to get to, but get there faster.
And so let's pause there for just a moment because tremendous insights here. And what's interesting is a couple of things. When we start off as a cockroach startup. We're bootstrapping it. That's terrific. And as we both know, it takes you to a certain point. It likely takes you further than you ever would have gone otherwise. But nothing's ever perfect. It does have its limitations. And the business got to the point where you needed more capital to accelerate that growth, have a wider reach, make more of a difference. But what I like is along the way, you said the past 7 or plus years or so, you began building a business relationship with the entity that ultimately came in and acquired you. Did you know that at the time? Was that something deliberate? Hey, this looks like a good company. Maybe one day we can do something more together, or did that just organically happen?
It happened, I won't say organically. I think they had an interest initially back 6, 7 years ago, but the offer, and it's sort of like your story, the offer was low and it wasn't at the level that I felt comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, thank you very much, but let's talk in 5, 8 years. I'm going to grow the company.
Okay.
And so that stayed with me. And they were very good people, very good company, very, I won't say family oriented, even though it's Fortune 500 kind of company that ended up buying us.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a relationship that I was able to build over those years that made me feel more comfortable. That was the right group versus someone coming in cold. Here, I've got gazillions of dollars I want to throw in your desk and let's do business. I had a relationship that I had built, and that's what I felt most comfortable with versus any other firm that may have been interested or that was interested in the organization.
And so you took it slow and steady. You were curious. You had those conversations. You got to know the other party. And it sounds like when it was time for you to start expanding and they were already interested, they were at the table, but you said, hey, in not so many words, not right now, not quite ready. And when you were, you circled back. And I'd imagine by that point, you'd probably spoken to enough outside parties that you knew what you wanted, what you didn't want, and you were able to craft a terrific liquidity event.
Absolutely. Yep. Exactly.
And quick question for you on that, Alan. As you look back, hindsight's always 2020. I know as an example, in my liquidity event, Alan, I made so many mistakes. As terrific as it was, there are still so many mistakes. And after all, how do you master something you've never done before? And when you look at your liquidity event, I would love to hear both sides of the coin. Were there one or two things that worked really well that you can share with our community? And were there one or two things perhaps that, hey, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have done that?
Yeah, I made, as we all do, if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. And I made hundreds and hundreds of mistakes over the years of things that just didn't work. I tried them thinking, okay, let's go this route, and didn't work, and tried this, didn't work. But I wouldn't rest on that very long. Okay, I made a mistake. I failed. I'm moving on, getting back up, moving on. And I think that was really what helped push us to that point of becoming more of a valuable company in the industry, was the fact that we constantly searched for innovative things. I've been called a visionary. I guess it's true because 30 years ago, who was thinking indoor quality? 30 years later, very, very, very few. And then on top of it, to do the things that we did, having a strong building science presence, a strong lab, and I didn't know COVID was going to hit. I knew that the indoor quality industry as a whole was significant. And there were a few key players, but nowhere near like it is today. I mean, everybody claim they do what they do and they're the best at indoor quality, but we were the pioneers. We were the first to the gate. And I think that's really what resonated with most that was interested in us and also our clients. They saw that. Like, we want you. We want to partner with you. We want what you have because we heard other success stories and that resonated with them.
It's interesting. It's always so hard doing something different, getting out there first. But when you do it and you do it world class, which you did, you're really the victor. You have the rewards that come along with that, and you're in a league of your own. Well, Alan, I'm wondering, let's talk a little bit out loud here for everyone to listen in, but it's just you and I that's talking. We're really at a point here where we can just go on and on. I mean, we want to hear about this new business. You've shared what really worked in your liquidity event, and we could perhaps talk about the post-exit life. My thinking is, why don't we talk a little bit about the post-exit life? We'll wrap things up. We'll take this as a rain check to have another conversation of what you're doing now and how that parlays into the health area and really builds off of the business that you had. What do you think? Does that work for you?
Absolutely. Yep.
Terrific. So as we begin to wrap things up here, Alan, one question for you on the post-exit life. So nose to the grindstone. You're just flat out, you're building the business, you're bootstrapping, you're educating along the way, doing all these things. You're saying no to everyone who wants you to say yes in terms of doing something with them. Business grows, you get to the point now where you know who your acquirer is going to be and you craft a deal with them. What's it like the day of and the next day? So the deal's closed, the money's been wired, you've got that, and now it's a different owner in the business. How was that for you? And how, because it's so fresh for you as of this recording, how are you dealing with that? What's life after the deal like?
Well, that's a great question. When I discussed the M&A with the new owners, the objective was initially, and in my due diligence, I checked with other firms, was they pretty much leave you alone. You're running the business as you were. In fact, that's in their vision, they state that we buy companies and leave the entrepreneurial spirit, the culture, the branding, the market in place and let it grow. I came in the next day a lot richer than I was the day before.
Yeah, it's always nice.
And I could have taken a month off and just sort of chill out. I was at work the next day. I loved what I did. There really wasn't any, oh my gosh, look at it, where it was business as usual. And that was an interesting, normally when you sell a business, you're out and new guys are in. It wasn't the way. I had signed a 2-year agreement with them and we end up, going into a year with it. But I think it really I didn't see any major differences. It was business as usual. And we continued, obviously we had some financial modifications and some safety modifications that occurred relatively soon, but it wasn't like all of a sudden you see 30 people from corporate coming down and all of a sudden there's all new faces. I didn't lose one person. Everybody stayed on afterwards. And actually before and during and afterwards, I had an initiative of hiring 50 people. And in this difficult marketplace was very challenging. And so we were doing things that we hadn't done before, even having career fair days every single week in our corporate. We had a training room that sat 50 people that we'd bring people in. We would wine and dine them, if you will, and educate them as why we do what we do and why we're the best application for them. I told our staff and our recruiting team, I said, I want it to look like when somebody comes aboard that they've been recruited like a student athlete in a football team or a basketball team. They get heavily recruited. They get wine and dine. They get their name on a document. In fact, my son, he was a Division I basketball player and he got recruited by North Carolina State and Florida International and a bunch of other universities. And every time he would do a visit, they'd have his name on a placard. The agenda was all laid out for him. Here's where you're going to be. Here's what you're going to do. His name was on the placard. And so I told our guys, I want this to be like they're being recruited as a student athlete coming into the team, but they're being recruited as a player for our team. I always refer to everybody as a teammate. So our new teammates, we're recruiting new teammates. And here I want, when we have an agenda, it's a 2-hour agenda. I want their name on that placard. I want, when they do a 2-week training, the post-hire training, I want their name on that placard. I want them to feel that they're valued and they're going to be super, and create a career, not just a job. In an industry that nobody knew about. I mean, nobody knew this. This was actually an industry, and we were creating career opportunities for people coming into the equation. So those are again, I just want to be different. I'm not going to put an ad in Indeed and expect 50 people to walk in the door and sign up and let's do this differently. We had balloons and we had drinks and foods. We did something with it. And that was important to me. And I think important to those who were being recruited, that they felt, oh gosh, we had a indoor basketball court and an indoor workout area. And I had our recruits go around. They do the walkthrough of our lab and our HVAC lab that we have. We have a large $250,000 lab HVAC systems that we train our people on. I said to our recruiter, I said, look, here's what I want you to do. I want you to, when you're doing the walkthrough, let's do a gift card of $25. And the one who can make the most out of 5 free throws, we're going to give them a card. Can you imagine going back home and that your wife says, hey, how'd the interview go? You can't believe it. I shot 5 baskets and I made 2 and I want a gift card. Who does that? It's different. You can take something as mundane as that. We had the court, we had it. So let's do something different. They're going to remember that versus the other companies that they may have interviewed with. Like, okay, that company, you did the basketball. That's pretty cool. Those are pretty neat people. Let's go with them.
Love that. Just love how you just all the way through, it's a trend. You're curious. And how can you be different? How do you stand out? How do you do the why and just make that difference? Well, Alan, why don't we put a pause on the conversation? This is going to be a multi-part series here that we're going to be going down this rabbit hole of success with you and what you've done. And we've just heard the first installment of how really in an incredibly generic and competitive industry, you stood out, built a company that took all the awards, became victorious, had a terrific liquidity event. We're going to put a pause on that. Future episodes will continue. But let's wrap things up. I have the privilege and the honor for every interview, Alan, of asking this one question as a bit of a thought experiment. So let me put that out there for you. Think of the movie Back to the Future. And in the movie, you have that magical DeLorean car that can take you to any point in time. So Alan, imagine now it's tomorrow morning. You look outside your window, and there it is, the DeLorean car. Not only is it curbside, but the door's open, waiting for you to hop on in. So you go in, and you can now go to any point in your life. Alan as a young child, a teenager, adult, whatever the point in time would be. What are you telling yourself, Alan? What are you telling your younger self in terms of, hey, Alan, do this, but don't do that? Or here's some life wisdom or some life lessons. What does that sound like for you?
Great question. I would say that I didn't emphasize going through. I was so interested in business, and I'm not sure why, that I really didn't pay attention to school. No, I got through school and I went through it, but I didn't pay attention to it. And I think it's critical that one does that. And if I went back, I would think, okay, I'm going to be the best student I can become. My focus wasn't on the student side of it. I was more on maybe sports. I literally would finish school. I'd go play sports, and I'd do my side job. I'd work. And at the time, we didn't have a lot of money as a family. So, my money went to the family that I made as a part-time person employment. But I'd say really focus on the academics more. I've learned a lot more on the non-academic side of going into business and learning, because they don't teach this in school, period. They don't teach this. In fact, it's the opposite. It's theoretical and non-business. The business classes I went to me were the most intriguing because there were stories and they resonated with me. And I could, okay, if I did that, I could do this. And that's really what I would go back in the future with.
Some terrific insights there. And thank you for being vulnerable and just putting yourself out there and being so transparent. And Alan, as we wrap up this first part, what will be a many-part dialogue and conversation, heartfelt thank you for taking part of your time and being with us on the Deep Wealth podcast. And before we wrap it up, though, one last question for you, and we'll put this in the show notes. For any listener who would like to find you online, what would be the best place?
Probably my LinkedIn. I'm in the process of developing a website, but my LinkedIn account probably would be the best. Just search my name, Alan Wozniak, not to be confused with Steve Wozniak. And you'll find me and you'll find what I do and why I do what I do. And then probably by the next podcast, I'll have a website that will show what I'm literally actively pursuing. And my new mission is going to be helping others do what I learned of 30 years of business, helping mentor them and helping coach them to get to their destination as well.
That's a terrific cliffhanger that we're going to put a pause on and to be continued. And you're the master of suspense, Alan. And so once again, as we officially put this one in the books, a heartfelt thank you. And as always, please stay healthy and safe.
Jeffrey, thanks for having me.
The Deep Wealth experience was definitely a game changer for me.
This course is one of the best investments you will ever make, because you will get an ROI of 100 times that. Anybody who doesn't go through it will lose millions.
If you don't have time for this program, you'll never have time for a successful liquidity.
I mean, it was the best value of any business course I've ever taken. The money was very well spent.
Compared to when we first began, today I feel better prepared, but in some respects, maybe less prepared, not because of the course, but because the course brought to light so many things that I thought we were on top of that we need to fix.
I 100% believe there's never a great time for a business owner to allocate extra hours into his or her week or day. So it's an investment that will yield results today. I thought I will reap the benefit of this program in 3 to 5 years down the road. But as soon as I stepped forward into the program, my mind changed immediately.
There was so much value in the experience that the time I invested paid back so much for the energy that was expended.
The Deep Wealth experience compared to other programs is the top. What we learned is very practical. Sometimes you learn stuff that is great to learn, but you never use it. The stuff we learned from Deep Wealth experience, I believe is going to benefit us both.
I've done an executive MBA. I've worked for billion-dollar companies before. I've worked for smaller companies before I started my business. I've been running my business successfully now for getting close to a decade. We're on a growth trajectory. Reflecting back on the Deep Wealth, I knew less than 10% what I know now. Maybe close to 1% even.
Hands down the best program in which I've ever participated. And we've done a lot of different things over the years. We've been in other mastermind groups, gone to many seminars, workshops, conferences, retreats, read books. This was so different. I haven't had an experience that's anything close to this in all the years that we've been at this. It's 5-star, A+.
I would highly recommend it to any super busy business owner out there. And Deep Wealth is an accurate name for it. This program leads to deeper wealth and happier wealth, not just deeper wealth. I don't think there's a dollar value that could be associated with such an experience and knowledge that could be applied today and forever.
Are you leaving millions on the table? Please visit www.deepwealth.com/success to learn more. If you're not on my email list, you'll want to be. Sign up at www.deepwealth.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode of the Sell My Business podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Reviews help me reach new listeners, grow the show, and continue to create content that you'll enjoy. As we close out this episode, a heartfelt thank you for your time, and as always, please stay healthy and safe.